Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's going to be doing a driving comparison between the Ford Bronco Raptor and the Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 392 to see which insane off-road SUV drives the best. Before we get in this video though, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Ed Kenley Ford here in Layton, Utah for giving me some time with this Bronco Raptor. I'm going to include a link to their website in the description down below so you can check out what they have currently. And if you don't already know, the Ed Kenley Ford here in Layton does not charge any sort of markups on any of Ford's products. So if you want a great deal on a Ford, reach out to them. And then on a side note, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get right into it. You know what? Every single time I have the opportunity to drive a Raptor, I take it. It's such a cool vehicle. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I am beyond hyped to own one of these in the future. Like, this is one of those vehicles where, like, I don't care if I have to sell my soul, whatever I have to do to get one, I'll get one. This just makes it. So first off, the ride quality, really comfortable. Now, compared to the F-150 Raptor, this isn't quite as comfortable, but for being a utilitarian off-road vehicle that you can take half of the stuff off of it, you can take the top off, you can take the doors off, all of that, it rides really well, and it's really well insulated too. You don't get all of the rattles and everything that you get with the Wrangler, which I find very impressive. Ford has somehow managed to make it work to where this just has this really well insulated cabin. It still does get some wind noise, and we'll kind of see that on the highway, but overall it's pretty good. You do get a bit of tire noise though from those 37s, which it's 37s, people, it's expected. Okay, so we are up and moving again with the Bronco Raptor, and hopefully you guys can see how responsive the transmission is. Just like the F-150 Raptor, it's just with the gear shifts, it's absolutely wonderful. Speaking of responsive, gonna pop it into the sport mode here so it gets even more aggressive. I love how this thing drives. Now, the next thing to note, brakes are really good. This weighs almost as much as an F-150 Raptor, but it's a little bit lighter, and so it just feels like it stops better compared to an F-150 Raptor. This engine's so responsive. They've got an anti-lag system with this in the Baja mode. But even when you're just in the regular driving mode, it's still like, and if you put it into manual mode, it's so good. Now, it's not the quickest vehicle on the planet. I'd say this is probably a little bit quicker than than the F-150 Raptor, but it's not like insane. Look how responsive the transmission is. It makes for such a fun driving experience because of how responsive this is. Now, on the highway, you do get wind noise. It's not bad though for what it is. The top insulation with the Bronco Raptor, it actually does a pretty good job of mitigating the wind noise, but understand, it's a convertible vehicle, it's a block of cheese, it's gonna be noisy, especially compared to like an F-150 Raptor, for example. So to sum things up here with the driving experience with the Bronco Raptor, it's so fun. The paddle shifters are super fun to use as well. It just drives so well. It basically takes, in my opinion, all of the good characteristics of the Bronco and all the good characteristics of the Raptor and puts them into one package, which obviously is not going to fit for everyone. For those of you that this does fit for, it's an absolute blast to drive, both on-road, and I have taken one of these off-road. It's so capable, and really, there's nothing out there that drives quite like this. It really does have a unique driving experience that I think is really exciting for any car enthusiast. setting off in the Wrangler 392. Completely different experience compared to the Bronco Raptor. Let me actually lean the seat back a little bit so you guys can get a better view. Yeah, completely different experience compared to the Bronco Raptor. So it does feel, it is a smaller vehicle. It does feel smaller. It's also lighter. So the Bronco Raptor, it weighs about 5,700 pounds. This weighs close to like 5,000 pounds, roughly. And so you can perceive the weight difference, but bigger than that, it's the size difference. Because the Bronco Raptor does get around its weight with really good handling from the independent front suspension and from the Fox shocks. But yeah, it's crazy. Like this feels like a much smaller vehicle. Now the next thing is going to be sound. Huge sound difference. So with this, obviously having the V8, I mean, it really does define this vehicle. With the Bronco Raptor, the handling and the suspension and the steering and all that define that vehicle. The engine's really good in the Bronco Raptor. The transmission, I think the transmission also kind of defines the Bronco Raptor because of how responsive it is. This has one heck of an engine. I mean, just, it is pretty crazy. Let me see if I can get around this truck for you guys. So obviously the Bronco Raptor can't do that. But I will say wind noise is quite a bit, it's louder in here, which is weird because the Bronco Raptor sits a little bit higher. But it seems like the insulation in the Bronco Raptor is better compared to the Wrangler. When you're just highway cruising, I mean the engine, and you can also close the valves. The engine's relatively quiet, but I mean it's still always, like you always get a little bit of rumble from the V8. Now suspension's not nearly as comfortable. This is definitely, you know, a little bit bumpier, and it makes sense, right? Smaller tires, and the shocks aren't nearly as good as we have in the Bronco Raptor. So, it obviously begs the question, Bronco Raptor or Wrangler when it comes to driving? Well, it's kind of a difficult question to answer because I just think that there are different people for both of the vehicles. So with the Bronco Raptor, that is for someone who, you know, just is all about off-road performance. You know, you want the most when it comes to just create all over capability, right? Because it can do high speed and low speed off-roading. Whereas this can do all the Wrangler stuff, right? It can do all the rock crawling. But it has a crazy engine. Now, the one downside about this engine with this vehicle is you can't really use this engine off-road because this doesn't have suspension that can handle high-speed stuff. And so this engine kind of, although extremely fun on-road, is pretty much useless for most off-roading. That being said, you know, I think like 50 years from now, because this has a V8, it's probably going to be considered more collectible than the Bronco Raptor. The Bronco Raptor is, you know, I'm sure low mileage ones are going to be somewhat collectible, but I think that people are going to remember, they're going to be like, man, Jeep put a V8 in the Wrangler, right? It's crazy. But then people are going to remember the Bronco Raptor for the performance. But I also think that, like, we're going to get off-roaders. Let's do this. We're going to get off-roaders in the future that have even crazier performance than the Bronco Raptor. And so, you know, it goes all over the place. What I have to say is, you know, if you have a chance, I drive both of them, which it's really hard to get a hold of both of them. But, you know, from my experience, I think they both drive really well. I think that the Bronco Raptor, as an all-around vehicle, it seems like it's a better vehicle because it's more capable and it just drives better. But this just has so much character. It's one of those vehicles that's nowhere near perfect, but it's got so much character, and that's what makes you love it. Let me know which one you'd pick.